Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the CBT podcast. I'm here with Ethan. I'm here with Rod, and today we're going to be ranking the top 5 best off seasons in the whole NBA this season. So let's go ahead and get straight into it. At number 5, we had the Atlanta Hawks, who brought in Dejounte Murray and Aaron Holiday and Frank Kaminsky. But let's be real, the prize of that is Dejounte Murray. Rod, I know you were a big supporter of this trade. How did you feel about Atlanta's off season?
Yeah, I think we all believe changes had to be made after their recent playoff performance. To go from a conference finals appearance to winning one playoff game, that's just unacceptable. And I think it's also fair to say that everybody not named Trae Young on the Hawks roster took a step in the wrong direction last year. From Kevin Huerter to DeAndre Hunter to Gallinari to Capella to John Collins, I didn't see a lot of improvement last season is the crux of that. And they did manage to dump off Gallinari and Kevin Huerter. And in return, as we all know, they got the boy, the kid, the GOAT, Dejounte Murray in return. Now, I thought they would trade John Collins. I thought that was a foregone conclusion a month ago, but it appears they're just going to roll on with them amidst all the issues they appear to have every offseason. But I will say this, I am not a guy who takes Drew League games into a lot of consideration because if that were the case, Isaiah Thomas would still be an All-NBA player. But if you are one of those people, DeJounte, Trae, and John Collins have looked very scary in the Drew League. So I think the Hawks, just by getting DeJounte, they're in the top 5. And if they don't win 50 games next year and win at least one playoff series, there has to be some real talks about Nate McMillan's job security.
No, definitely. I 100% agree with you. The Hawks had a great offseason adding in Murray, and they gave up basically nothing, in terms of their true team. In terms of picks, of course, they gave up a lot. But just in their core team, what they went to when they were in the playoffs before, definitely they very improved.
Yeah, I'm far from the world's biggest Hawks fan, but you have to look at this offseason in a positive light. I mean, I feel like Dejounte Murray was exactly what they needed to go out there and pair with Trae Young, who obviously is one of the worst defenders in the NBA, match him alongside a defensive mastermind like Dejounte Murray, and you have something real special brewing. But I still don't think this move does enough to propel them as a contender in the Eastern Conference. I think there's still 4 or 5 teams better than them, but still definitely a step in the right direction for Atlanta. The number 4 spot in the rankings, we have an Eastern Conference team that is definitely not a contender. The New York Knicks had their first positive offseason in a while. Obviously, the highlight being Jalen Brunson and the Mitchell Robinson extension, as well as bringing in Isaiah Hartenstein. I don't love the Mitchell Robinson extension. I think it was a little bit of an overpay for a guy who really doesn't have that high of a ceiling. But obviously, bringing in Brunson, you have your point guard of the future in New York. And Isaiah Hartenstein is a move that flew really under the radar, but I think he's super underrated and will really play a big role in New York.
Yeah, when you need something, and I mean need something, like the Knicks needed a point guard, you'll spend however much you want to go and get a point guard. And they went and they spent and they acquired Jalen Brunson. I do agree with you. I don't love the Mitchell Robinson extension. I thought it was too long of a deal. I thought it was too much money to give him. But to be honest, I wouldn't even be surprised if we don't see Isaiah Hartenstein win over the heart of Tom Thibodeau and close a lot of games for the Knicks. So that's kind of a non-factor for me. The main thing, like you said, is Jalen Brunson. The Knicks offense in the Tom Thibodeau era has been non-existent. The only reason they had a playoff appearance is because they were somehow the best defense, one of the best defenses ever, and other teams missed every three-pointer against them. That did not happen last year, as we saw, but having a guy like Jalen Brunson to hopefully take the ball out of the hands of a Julius Randle and make him play off the ball, hopefully for the first time in 3 to 4 years, I think that'll do a lot for the Knicks offseason, or their offense, sorry. And for the first time in my basketball lifetime, we have seen the Knicks now have a promising young backcourt with RJ Barrett and Jalen Brunson. And it's rare to say, like you said, but it's a good offseason. And I think they are taking a step now to being a solidified playoff team year in and year out.
No, I mean, the Knicks definitely needed Jalen Brunson. I think that was something that they really needed. And just getting that player, I think should put them in the conversation for the play-in tournament. But at least for me, I think there's still something missing. It's like it leaves a little bit of a bad taste in your mouth. Like, you need I think there's still something that the Knicks are really missing to make them a contender
Oh yeah.
once again.
Oh, they're still a couple steps away, I think for sure. But moving on to the number 3 spot on our list, a team that you may have not guessed was going to be here, considering they've been probably the most miserable franchise in the league across the past 2 decades. But the Sacramento Kings are finally making moves that could be shifting them towards a play-in appearance, drafting Keegan Murray, who looked phenomenal in the summer league, to say the least. They also brought in Malik Monk and Kevin
Yeah.
Huerter in a trade. They gave up Mo Harkless, but I mean, I don't think they're going to miss Mo Harkless too much. I think they will be a play-in team this season. Keegan Murray is going to win Rookie of the Year over guys who were taken ahead of him like Paolo and Chet, just because he's the most NBA-ready guy. And I think the Kings will sneak into the 10th spot and be in the play-in. They're not going to win it, but they will be in the play-in, which Kings fans, I'm sure, will rejoice about.
Yeah, we already talked in the summer league video about how Keegan Murray silenced the droves of casuals who immediately were ready to call any pick the Kings made a horrible pick. He shut them up. He proved he can play at the 4, at the 3. I mean, he looks like a shooting guard, but he's just 6'8". So he can play a lot of places. You already mentioned adding guys like Malik Monk, Kevin Huerter, reuniting that Kentucky backcourt from a few years ago with Fox and Monk. The Knicks, or not the Knicks, the Kings have depth, and that's not something we can say they've had for a long, long time. They still have Davion Mitchell as a combo guard off the bench, and I love the fact that they are going forward with the Fox Sabonis duo. I think that has a lot of untapped potential, and like you said, I think the Kings have a real chance to make and win the play-in and end the one of the longest playoff droughts in sports history.
I think in terms of the Kings, they really have set themselves nicely up for the future. I think what they've been able to do with their draft picks, just picking up Keegan Murray, I think he looks phenomenal in the summer league. And I think once he really starts developing into, those players that just develop in the NBA, I think truly he'll end up looking like, do I dare say, Paul George type?
He's got that type of body.
I I can kind of see it. There was flashes of it, but you never know.
All right, well, moving on to our team at number 2, a team that is largely gaining a lot of potential this season from someone returning from injury, although they also brought in a point guard who averaged 20 points and 7 assists last time he played, and that is the Los Angeles Clippers. Obviously, that point guard being John Wall. As we've talked about before, I do think they are currently the favorites to come out the Western Conference. They've just been hitting all the right buttons, especially this offseason. They're not doing too much, but they're also making enough moves to stay relevant and continue improving a team that already has the talent to make a deep run in the playoffs.
Yeah, I already thought the PG Kawhi duo was good enough to get the Clippers to the finals. I didn't really thought they had a lot of options this offseason besides bringing their guys back. The John Wall move came out of nowhere. I did not expect the Rockets to buy him out, but they bought him out, and the Clippers was the first place he went. He didn't even have to think really. He wanted to go to the Clippers to play with PG and Kawhi. And like I said earlier, they brought back Amir Coffey, Terrence Mann, Rocco. And by moves like that, they did lose Hartenstein, but I think we can still say the Clippers are the deepest team in the league because they could have an injury, 2 injuries, 3 injuries, and I think still roll out 9 to 10 guys that are better than most teams' benches. They move guys like Reggie Jackson to the bench now by having John Wall start. I think he will contribute. Remember, he was a 6 man of the year in his career already. So I think we will see flashes of that this season. And yeah, you said the Clippers were already your favorites. I have to agree with that. This was an amazing offseason for them.
No, truly. Like, I'm a Celtics fan. I love what the Celtics have been doing, but also I love what the Clippers have been doing. Like, they truly have not given up that many pieces and yet have still improved themselves with a team that is over the luxury cap by how much? I don't
That's a
know how
lot.
many.
A
Yeah,
lot.
they're way over that. So for them to even attempt to improve themselves and get John Wall in the process like that, that's truly incredible. And I can't wait to see what they're gonna do this season.
Speaking of the Boston Celtics, the team at the number one spot in our list that had the best offseason in the entire NBA was, in fact, the Boston Celtics. They brought in Malcolm Brogdon and Danilo Gallinari and didn't ship out any of their top 8 players in playoff minutes per game. So in my eyes, I don't see how there's any way you don't grade this offseason an A+. They addressed their biggest need in a playmaking point guard who can really manage the game and take care of the ball. And they got just what they needed in Malcolm Brogdon and didn't really have to give up much valuable besides a first rounder. Gallinari is going to provide some great scoring off the bench, which is something they were also lacking. That was super evident in the finals last year. He'll come out, knock down some jumpers. And we just said the Clippers have become the favorites in the West. But you want to talk about the favorites in the whole NBA. I don't think it's any other team than the Boston Celtics. Brad Stevens doing everything right. The Celtics are in the perfect position to win the finals in this upcoming season.
Yeah, I think the sign of a truly great front office is to make moves happen when there's not a lot of options. We talked about how Tyus Jones was like the dream get for the Celtics. He re-signed pretty early with the Grizzlies, and we were like, oh, what are they going to do? And poof, out of nowhere, they just add Malcolm Brogdon. Like we said, but they gave up nothing. I doubled down on that. They gave up dirt and some used toilet paper, and they got Malcolm Brogdon out of it. It's hard enough to maintain a roster that just had a finals run. Not only did they do that, they added Malcolm Brogdon and even hit on a guy like J.D. Davidson in the draft. I mean, who would have thunk? They didn't even have a first round pick, did they? And they still drafted a guy who looked like one of the best players in the whole summer league. So they had no missteps this offseason. I had to put them at number one.
You say that your dream was for Tyus Jones, but my dream was for a good old Malcolm Brogdon
And Kyle Kuzma.
No.
I still stand by my Kyle Kuzma take too. But Malcolm Brogdon was the number one thing that they needed, and Brad Stevens must have been listening to me because we got him. And so I definitely think that the Celtics had the best offseason. In the finals, what was our biggest issue? Turnovers. What would Malcolm Brogdon do? Help with the turnovers. He does everything we need him to, and he's going to buy right into the system because he's another player that can just play great defense. He can guard 1 through 3, maybe 4 at times, depending on who it is. But definitely, I cannot wait to see what the Celtics are about to do this season and win the finals.
Yeah, Malcolm Brogdon did win Defensive Player of the Year at UVA in 2016, to your point. But I think that's going to do it for us in today's video. I'm going to ask that you please drop a like, subscribe, leave a comment. Who do you think had the best offseason this year? How would you rank them? What team's going to be first on the list after drafting Wembanyama next year? I want to thank you guys all again for watching, and we will see you in the next episode.